Hi, I'm here with James Stewart, who's the founder of the Toronto-based company Geneva Films. And James has been highly involved in the 3D industry. In fact, in 2004, James was involved with a 3D campaign for Toyota. And since then, you've been doing several 3D projects. I'd like to start off, James, by asking you, what's changed since 2004? Are there any lessons you've learned? So that, are you managing to come to establish certain rules that you follow when you're filming a 3D production since 2004?
Well, when we started in 2004, it was really the earliest time of digital 3D. There certainly had been IMAX 3D films. James Cameron had started shooting some digital films like Ghost of the Abyss. But the digital 3D revolution that we're seeing now in 3D was really starting. So it was very, very difficult, sort of bleeding edge technology to take two cameras together and put them on a rig, mirror rig, and to try to motorize them so you could effectively do the same thing you do in 2D. So we worked with Steve Sclair, whose company is now called 3Reality Digital, and they designed a rig that would work for our use, which was a project for Toyota. It was a large screen brand film for an event in Japan, and we used Sony F900s or F950s on a camera rig. So we shot HD and we captured it on location. It was primarily on location, but the rig was very, very big and very cumbersome. So we had to design the production workflow and the shooting schedule based around having this 250-pound rig on top of a crane primarily, or a dolly. Certainly wasn't something you could go handheld with. Now the technology has changed quite dramatically in that there are smaller format 3D cameras, there are smaller rigs. We did a project for the Olympics in Vancouver where we used a variety of different size rigs. We used a small side-by-side rig on a Steadicam. We used a small side-by-side rig on with SI2Ks on a small jib, as well as a larger mirror rig for doing close-ups and actors and things like that. So the rig technology is changing very quickly. 3Reality Digital now has a small Steadicam version of their larger rigs, fully motorized, and we are working with a variety of companies, just trying to get the tools into a place where we can shoot the way we like to shoot, which is generally at a fairly good pace, a fairly aggressive schedule, and for the commercial work that we do, it has a slower schedule, so you can use a bigger rig on a dolly in a studio. But if you need to go Steadicam, the tools now exist.
And I've heard very often that you shouldn't cut too quickly in 3D because people's eyes take a while to adjust. Are there any other rules that you sort of come up with while you're shooting in terms of how far you space away the width between the lenses or anything like that?
Well, I think the first and most important rule is don't hurt people's eyes. So you have an audience that you want to tell a story to. Part of your storytelling toolbox should not be causing them physical pain. When you do 2D, if you underexpose or overexpose or cut too fast, in 2D you're not really going to make people nauseous or sick. Maybe, I guess some people argued that Cloverfield, that feature film, was very shaky cam and people were getting ill. I didn't experience that. But in the case of 3D, because you are moving people's eyes, and for an extended period of time, you can actually cause them to force their eyes to do unnatural things. Our eyes will not naturally do this or do this, but you can take the images and you can present images that are offset or rotationally offset, and if the audience tries to fuse those images by trying to rotate one of their eyes or trying to toe them in too far or diverge them, your eyes can't do that, so that's when you get eye strain. So as long as the images that we capture are perfect, then it's a very good experience.
Can you tell me a bit more about your the productions you did with Lexus and the Sprint campaign as well?
Right, so we recently did cinema commercials for the US for Sprint and Lexus, and we have a few more that we're working on right now. So the Sprint campaign was launched in 2D and 3D, and it was launched through traditional media in 2D and cinema in 2D and 3D. So it was very popular, even on YouTube. About 1 million people saw it on YouTube, and a lot of people, similar to Avatar, when people saw it in 2D, they had this real desire to go back and see it again. A lot of people were blogging, have you heard it's coming out in 3D? It's in cinemas in 3D, and so it was a very successful campaign to get the word out in 2D, but also make people aspire to see it in 3D. And it played in cinemas quite beautifully in 3D, and people were blogging. It was better than the film. People really enjoyed it, and I think for Lexus it was a huge success to venture into 3D, and they're the first automotive brand to do a cinema campaign in 3D, and I think it was very very successful for them.
Okay, I think we're going to have a quick look at that now.
We gave it the power of a supercar. Then we gave it the precision of a Lexus. And in turn, wrote a new definition of what's possible for an automobile. This is the pursuit of the impossible. This is the pursuit of perfection.
Do you think we'll get to the point where we just convert everything?
No, my belief is that native 3D is far better than CG, and it's far better than conversion. Conversion is a very good tool to have to fix shots, to convert footage that is archival. It's a good workaround, but it's never going to be as good as native 3D, because if you imagine looking around this room, there's thousands of layers. There's an infinite number of layers between me and these other spaces. Every leaf on every tree is actually on a different plane. To convert that is virtually impossible. So no matter what you do when you're converting, you are tricking the audience. But as we've seen with several movies that have come out that were converted very poorly, there's varying degrees of success with conversion. But as long as the standards of the people doing it are very high, and they'll only accept images that are as close to native as possible, it can be very successful. And when we do it, we understand 3D. We understand what live action 3D looks like. So when we convert something, we look at it and we're essentially aspiring to make something that looks as good or better than live action 3D. And a lot of the companies that are doing it don't really have a stereoscopy background, don't have a live action background. They don't seem to understand that the audience does not want to see something that looks like cardboard cutouts. It looks like layers of flat objects. And some converted films, Clash of the Titans, Alice in Wonderland, Piranha 3D, Last Airbender.
Was that Piranha 3D and Airbender converted?
Yeah.
Really?
When people see those, it's pretty clear that it's converted. Alice in Wonderland was done quite well, but if you look closely at it, it's not perfect, but very successful film for Tim Burton. And very good idea for them to convert it.
Do you find that people act differently when they know they're being filmed in 3D? Do the people you work with, or are they just exactly the same? Is it just exactly the same as a 2D production? Is there any kind of a special awareness that you've noticed of actors?
The actors? Yeah. I try not to tell them much about 3D, because what I don't want is to them to start acting like they're on a stage, like doing this, hey, we're in 3D. Because what we produce in 3D is not so much about House of Horrors and getting close to the camera and wow, isn't this cool? We try to create an immersive experience which is very natural to the way your eyes feel, and as a first goal, and then we try to enhance the depth by having things a bit closer to the audience to make that more intimate, or a lot farther back to make them have a sense they need to look around. And that was done very successfully in Avatar. It's been done very successful in our work. And it's just, the actors need to tell their story with facial expressions primarily. And whether they're in 2D or 3D, it's the same story that they're telling.
Right. And finally, you mentioned that you're working on a stop motion film. Is that right? Yeah. Can you just tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, we're doing a stop motion feature film called Foxed, directed by Nev Bazaar. I'm producing it, and it is similar to Coraline. It's a similar story about a young girl, and it's shot in stop motion 3D. So it's shot with a small motion control unit, stop motion, so it's shot frame by frame. And Nev is this incredibly talented animator, director, and it's a pretty exciting project for us.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much, James, for talking to me and the readers of 3dfocus.co.uk. And I hope you have a great success with the stop motion film. In fact, if you have any news for me, I'll put it on the website on 3dfocus.co.uk, and so you'll be able to find out more about that. If you want to know more about Geneva Films, go to www.genevafilmco.com. I've got that right, and you can learn more about James and the project he's worked on. So thank you ever so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the 3D experience.
Great, my pleasure.